Just a quick one.
This episode of Pulp Kitchen is brought to you by Noggin HQ.
Noggin HQ is a hot new credit referencing agency for Gen Z and millennials. They are revolutionizing the way that credit scoring is done by making it cheaper, simpler, and easier.
If you're interested, you're under 30, and you want to start building a better credit score, follow @Noggin HQ now on all social media platforms. Back to the show. I went to go see Operation Mincemeat, and it was fine.
Yeah, it looks fine.
And there's, I think you say fine, and I think you think that's worse. The fine is like a damning praise, but actually, no, it's fine, and it's okay. It's a little bit long, and this is the new film starring Colin Firth and Richard McFadden?
Matthew
McFadden.
Greg.
Yeah. And it's directed by John Madden. And do you know about the Operation Mincemeat? Did you know about this?
I didn't know about the operation. I've seen the trailer, and isn't it something like they have to trick the Nazis into thinking there's a fake invasion or something?
Really, really interesting story. It's set in leading up to events in June 1943, so sort of fairly middle of the Second World War. And basically, it was at the height of espionage and spying, correspondence in Spain and London and Berlin, and these trails that get both true and fake information to the Germans. And there was this whole sense that everyone could send each other false information based on where they were about to attack. And Churchill and all the top military aides, this is the people who are in the 20 Committee, which is like this secret, people who organize these spies. And there was this idea that they were going to invade Sicily in June, in 6 months' time. But Hitler was already putting troops in place, and if they were to send troops to Sicily, it would be one of the worst slaughters ever. Like if you turn up on a beach and they have artillery, you're going to get destroyed. So they had to convince the Germans that they were going to invade Greece instead, and they basically had to get that message out. And the way they were going to do that was have a body wash up on the shore of Spain with fake documents on its person, looking like real classified documents detailing how the Allies were going to invade Greece, not Sicily, which is insane. So they had to find a dead body. They had to meticulously decide what they should write in these letters to make it look like, come up with a story, a lover, a backstory, this whole thing. And the whole thing goes on from there. And the problem with this film is that it is too long. There is an entire romance subplot, which was so ill-placed and had nothing to do with the plot. As soon as I was watching, I was like, this needs to be cut. This had better be really relevant to the film. And it wasn't. And then Sally was also seeing it. She was like, what was that? That could have completely been cut, and it would never... Like, the fact that you're even making a face about a romance subplot in a World War II operation is quite strange. And what this film made me think of is the film Valkyrie with Tom Cruise, which actually those anti-Hitler Germans get a lot of mention in this, because there's this whole sense that we can give fake information to Germans, but there are some Germans which actually want to misdirect Hitler. So even if you send a message to a German officer, they might have figured out that it's fake, but they will work on the pretense that it's real to try and trick the Germans. There's so many levels to it, and it's genuinely a really fascinating story. And you're a big history buff, so I think there's lots for you to enjoy in it. But I was thinking about Valkyrie with Tom Cruise, which I think is actually a pretty thrilling watch, and I thought it was pretty entertaining to watch. This only has a short 15 to 20 minute window where I readjusted in my seat, and I'm like, oh yeah, look, come on, I've got to get this information, because you can see where this briefcase with the documents is going, and these different spies they have placed in Spain need to try and make it look like this is real, and that it can't go back to the Brits. We need to find a way for this to spill in a way that feels organic. And that was when I was like, this is good. The rest of it is a little bit slow, and there's this weird romance subplot where I'm like, this is very strange to be happening. Very well acted across the board, which I think resays it. You got Colin Firth doing the stiff British upper lip thing. You got Matthew McFadden, who's also I think doing really well in it. But it's I think we said this earlier. You described it as a tea and biscuits film. And I think, as much as I love going to cinema to see it, I think Christmas Eve, red wine, box of chocolates would be a great place for this film.
I see the poster for that film, and I also see a shortbread getting dunked into a cup of tea. And then the spoon tapping on the side. And
with a grandparent being like, that's what it was like in those days, just every 20 minutes,
And every so often some, parent coming and going, dinner's going to be in 20, that's fine.
I completely forgot. There is one other thing about Operation Mincemeat, which I really didn't like. So Ian Fleming, the writer of James Bond, was part of the 20 Committee. And he is like this really irritating presence in this film. I didn't like it at all because, that's Ian Fleming. And did you know that he wrote James Bond? And he is constantly writing in the corner, what are you writing over there, Fleming? Spy thrillers, spy books. I'm documenting all this down. And just like the whole point of this film is that even though there's this massive war going on with all these battlefields, actually the real war is being fought in these dark rooms with these unassuming people. And I get that. But just in case you didn't understand what this film was about, Ian Fleming is like, the war. You think it belongs out there, but really, in the dark corners of London, in a basement, the real war is being fought. And I'm like, thanks, Ian Fleming, just in case I didn't understand what this was about.
So he's narrating it?
He's narrating it, and he's constantly writing. And like, I don't want to say the performance is bad, but it's a very like wink to the camera, raised eyebrow, swirling. It's just so hammy. And again, like that whole side of it can have been cut. I know it's very cool because like Ian Fleming would have been very much inspired by the events that happened. And there's a whole scene with Q, and he picks up a watch. He's like, what does the watch do? And it's like,
can you do it? Sorry, but it sounds like they could have done it in a much more interesting and inventive way.
Yeah, and the story is really interesting. The actual interesting side of the actual history keeps it going a lot more than the way this film plays out.
Here's the thing about Johnny Flynn, who plays
Ian Fleming.
Johnny Flynn is fine as an actor. I don't really have an opinion either way. He's been good to good stuff. But I always remember Johnny Flynn because he did an advert for Cineworld, right? It was there for like years, right? And it was all about why we go to the cinema. And every time you went to see a film at the Cineworld, which was my local cinema back then, it would be this advert about why you should get a gift voucher and why you should come to the cinema and why it's great, okay? And it'd be this long thing about him sat in a cinema seat, and then it would go, and then he'd be like on set in like a Jurassic World type film, and then he'd be in like space.
I know this ad.
But he couldn't have given less of a shit, okay? He looks like he was waiting for that paycheck. And honestly, he delivers the line like this. Why do we go to the cinema? To escape. Thrilling action thrillers. And he's like saying it through gritted teeth. And there's a bit where it cuts to him and his friends afterwards because it's all about like getting a meal deal at a restaurant. And he goes, time for a tasty debrief. and I was like, do you have a gun to your head? Yeah. Are you okay?
His family at the back behind the camera.
Crikey. So, and then they replaced it with the guy from Ted Lasso doing a big advert.
Right, yeah.
Which is much more excitable.
Yeah, it's like I was getting the message of this film. I understood it, and then Ian Fleming hammed it home in case I didn't.